This is Liz Truss's political career. Hello there, Tarky here. Well, the Chancellor, Kwasi Kwarteng, hereinafter called Kamikaze, was sacked by Liz Truss on Friday. He'd dragged himself away from an IF meeting in the States one day early, probably with a view to perhaps saving his career. But unfortunately, Truss chose to throw him under the bus to save hers. This is perhaps going to be quite unfortunate since they have been friends for so many years. I wouldn't like to speculate what that might do to the friendship. You see, the thing is as well that economically, although Kwarteng, his mini budget, is blamed for the current financial market turmoil that's engulfing the United Kingdom, he and Truss are joined at the hip on these issues. They are in lockstep. It is a policy of them both. In fact, it's said that they spent an awful lot of time together penciling this out through the August when the Tory leadership contest was going ahead. Where that leaves Truss is obviously in a very, very difficult position. We've already seen that the Conservative Party is deeply unhappy with her position, has already forced a number of U-turns. A U-turn announced later on Friday was that the corporation tax would not be being lowered to 19% from the 25% that Sunak was going to push it back up to. How many more U-turns can you make? I think it's quite clear already that the economic policy put forward by our new Prime Minister is in tatters. Given that there are so few supporters in the Conservative Party, it's becoming clear that her position must be surely untenable. There's already talk amongst the Conservative Party about who can we find to replace her. The 1922 committee meeting that she had last Wednesday was apparently funereal, according to some quotes, but certainly those people that claimed that they'd interviewed MPs, mostly off the record to be fair, said that many of them, most of them, were deeply unhappy. For the moment, we have Jeremy Hunt brought in as Chancellor of the Exchequer. Hunt was a candidate against Boris Johnson. In fact, he was down to the last two with Boris Johnson in Boris Johnson's own election to party leader, therefore Prime Minister, in 2019. Hunt really didn't even make it off the starting line this time around. He is more or less opposed to the form of Trussonomics that has been put forward, but equally he is a Tory, so therefore he is probably no better really than the incumbent Chancellor was. For example, if he had been elected Prime Minister, one of his pitches would be that corporation tax would be reduced to 15%. Hunt is, however, considered a safe pair of hands politically, so it may be feasible that his place in the number 11 Downing Street would reassure the markets more, although if the intention is still to pursue so many of Truss's unfunded, uncosted tax cuts, then I almost certainly think that even Hunt's presence will not reassure the markets at all. You see, one of the biggest problems is that the Tory party, or the senior Tory party, still remains in a state of disbelief, dishonest disbelief, that it was Kwarteng's mini budget, his special fiscal event, that has caused the market unrest. Jacob Rees-Mogg, yes really, Business Secretary, was doing the rounds of the political programmes on Wednesday morning, claiming that it was nothing to do with the Chancellor's mini budget that would cause the problems on the markets. It was, of course, international. Everywhere was suffering the same sort of problems. Interestingly, ITN News interviewed Gillian Tett, editor-at-large of the Financial Times, shortly after Rees-Mogg had made his appearances. If you can find that interview on YouTube, that may be worth a look if you missed it originally broadcast. Gillian Tett doesn't mince her words. It's interesting watching her face when Jacob Rees-Mogg's intervention is mentioned to her. The half smile and the eye roll is an absolute picture. But it's her following words that basically cut through, so blunt. When asked whether Rees-Mogg was right about the political situation not being the cause of Britain's financial problems on the markets, Tett's reply was succinct. Well, that's obviously complete bollocks. Short and sweet. And again, if you've got a senior cabinet that appears to be in denial like that, or that is maliciously stating that there is no issue with the mini-budget, it's all the fault of the markets, I think you again go back to the fact that we have a significant problem with the politics of the present Tory party. For all that people call it Trussonomics, it is simply neoliberalism writ large. The same thing that's been inflicted on most of the developed world for the last best part of 50 years. Quite simply, it is free market fundamentalism. The markets will save us. The markets will decide what is and isn't made, what is and isn't produced. One of the biggest flaws with this, of course, is that free markets don't care about people. They might fulfill needs, but whose needs? There was a brilliant quote a few months ago in the letters page of The Guardian from Dr. Tony Blair, who made it quite clear that there is no such thing as a free market. They are all created by different sects of people meeting their own interests. What I find remarkable is the current Conservative leadership's inability to understand that free market fundamentalists, to a man or woman, as most of the cabinet is, they fail to comprehend that they have had their policies tested in front of the free market, and the free market has told them basically to poke it. You really can't buck the free markets. A tremendous irony, really a tremendous irony. And of course, Truss has no mandate from the British electorate for her complete change of heart over what got Boris Johnson his 80-seat majority in December 2019. It has not been put to the test, and indeed, as opinion polls are widely showing, it is entirely unpopular with the vast majority of the British public. They simply want more state intervention, not less. They don't see that tax cuts for the rich offer anything but further inequality. With an NHS already struggling, with strikes in public sector industries taking place because their staff are not receiving meaningful pay rises, it's almost inevitable that the Truss economic experiment will have to be brought to a close. How will this happen? There is some talk amongst the Conservatives that perhaps they might find a unity candidate or candidates, Sunak and Mordaunt being two that have popped up recently. The unity candidate would be able to be proposed unilaterally by the Conservative Party. It would not put it to a vote of the Conservative Party members. The importance of this is that, as one Tory MP said a few weeks ago, the problem with having constant elections of final twos by Conservative Party members is that the Tory Party members are presently considerably to the right of the Tory Party, let alone the UK's electorate as a whole, which means, basically, you get the headbanger every time. This obviously can't work. I personally believe that the Tories have shot themselves in the foot for the next election, but the question is, by how much? Starmer is looking very, very strong. The Labour Party on the whole is looking very, very strong. The left side of the Labour Party is not particularly happy, but as I've noted in other videos, they do need to understand that if you're going to influence policy, you need to be in power. And if you can't get yourself elected, then it's all so much hot air. What might possibly happen is that a vote of no confidence is pushed. And if the Tory party or enough backbenchers cannot see a resolution to their own fears and the signs that the Tory party leadership understands them and is willing to change course dramatically, a vote of no confidence might have sufficient backbench Tory backing. It's unlikely, but you never know, that eventually a general election is called sooner rather than later. It's got to be held by January 2025, and perhaps a vote of no confidence might bring it considerably forward. However, as I said, Truss herself is surely toast. Her political career has got to end here. Her and Kwarteng were in lockstep. Throwing him under the bus might bring her a few days, a few weeks, but there's already talk that perhaps by Monday she might be gone. If not by next week, then perhaps the week after. She's surely on borrowed time. Who the Tory party will put in her place is an open question. We've already discussed the possibility of Sunak and Mordaunt, but who knows? Who knows? Unfortunately, since the 2016 Brexit vote, there have been so much purging of sane, rational Tories, either who have left because of the terrible infighting and the name-calling from the far right of the party over their Remain status, or simply that they've been ousted by various leaders simply because they are not Brexity enough. Not surprising, really. Brexit is one of the biggest causes of the current financial situation because the United Kingdom has already taken a massive hit in its GDP. We'll still have to see what the future may bring. It's another week of political turmoil, and again, we're likely looking at several more weeks of political turmoil, unless, I believe, a general election gets called. The Tories may not be that willing to call a general election. They are so unpopular that a great many more of them may feel that they might lose their seats. But who they put in Liz Truss's place to shore up sufficient support that at the next election they don't lose disastrously, who knows? Anyway, see you next time. Chin chin.